Finance Minister Jaitley also met fund managers here in Tokyo and urged them to participate in a new idea which he floated recently, the NIIF. We also spoke to some of these fund managers and they seem to be excited about the NIIF story, but they maintain that there are some challenges in investing in the Indian infrastructure sector, but they're willing to explore and try to invest in NIIF.
This new institutions should play a very important role for India's development of infrastructures. Namely, is that the government directly sort of participate and provide funds and leverage the outside sort of funding for the infrastructures build up.
Right.
This is exactly what our institution expects to emerge.
Right. And we understand that you went to India recently and just undertook a tour. What was the feedback that you got from Japanese companies in India regarding investments in India?
Okay. I visited recently in India to have a discussion with the Indian IDFC and also Indian business group as well as Japanese companies. And of course that Indians economic macroeconomies performance is very sort of excellent. But when it comes to the investment, private investment, in particular from Japan, to infrastructure projects, this is one of the very challenging investment. And while that restructuring of economies, relaxation of tax system, open economy is performing very well, but still the infrastructure not only for India, but it takes a long time to recover the investment.
Right.
So this is an area we could mitigate and work together with the Japanese companies to encourage the investment.
Right.
So I think it is the right time to sort of make the Japanese investment in place. To my knowledge, there is not such a particularly the sizable Japanese investment to the infrastructure projects.
Right.
There's an export of infrastructure, Japanese export of infrastructure, like a subway. But when it comes to the investment, do the business, this is different sort of area.
Right.
And we still believe that a strong impression that the federal government is very eager to invite. And also the state is such a big country, state by state different, but the key is that I advise also the minister that how we could find good partners. This is a very much important sort of element to make the investment done successfully.
Right. But last question, sir. Would you like to participate in something like NIIF? Would you explore such an idea?
Oh, yes. That's what I discussed with the minister, that we should consider how we could work together with the NIIF. Right. Namely, that what we need is that firstly that find a good project, candidate project. It's namely that the deal flow. Right. They have very backed by the government, so and very extensive area of investment. So they should have very good candidates. Then we could work together based on the particular project. This is number one, and this fund is directly supported by the government. So whatever that necessary needs from Japanese companies or support, we may directly, so through that fund, the needs message to the federal government.
While the government is doing all it can to remove infrastructure bottlenecks, have those methods succeeded? We asked this question to some prominent members of corporate India, and this is what they had to say.
The infrastructure sector is under tremendous stress right now. You've got private sector balance sheets that are stressed. You've got the banking sector is also stressed on the infrastructure sector portfolio that they have on their books. So NIF has a very important role in kickstarting private sector interest for the sector. So that clearly is necessary, and the quicker we can get it operational, the better it is for the sector as a whole. The second part is to also begin to fix those issues in policy, in regulation, that would help private sector resurface from the experience in infrastructure and help banks deal with the same as they go forward. And there I think the primordial responsibility should be that all efforts to resuscitate the sector should focus on making sure projects which are stressed are brought back into well-being. And then we take measures that allow these well-constructed projects to get back to cash flow that can sustain operations. If that is done, then both the private balance sheet and the balance sheet of the banks would benefit. So if NIF can actually develop a framework by which these instruments can be deployed, monies backing that instrument goes into these projects, I believe that we have the possibility of resurrecting the sector in a much bigger way than the case as of now. Japan needs assets, long-dated assets. It's got a huge amount of pension funds and insurance funds. And we are a great market for absorbing those long-dated papers. So with technology, with Japanese capability of planning and design and construction and project management, backed by this kind of long-term money, I believe that we have the projects that could interest their appetite.
Let's have a developer's perspective on an idea like NIIF.
Well, I think NIIF is a no-brainer, as they would say. You cannot have the kind of infrastructure development in any country happening without the existence of a development financial institution, of which India is left with none. In the old days, you had the IDBI, ICICI, IFCA that played that role. But since they've all been converted into banks, and then IDFC, which is the last standing DFI, also becoming a bank now, you cannot have the kind of infrastructure build-out that India needs without having cheap, long-term, predictable money. And that is really what NIF seeks to address. The key thing is to get it up and running as rapidly as possible, because as things stand today, you have banks that have short-term money, whose interest rates are dependent on RBI calls, with no predictability about where it's going to be, That is the key to really, we have to change that. And that is the purpose that NIF will solve.
Let us also take some comments from you again from a developer's perspective on the kind of infrastructure development that FM just talked about. For example, we are seeking to build 30 kilometers of roads a day. We want to build perhaps a similar amount of railway tracks a day. Do you think it's feasible as a developer to basically aim of such targets? Because in previous years we have seen that we have failed miserably. As a developer, what is your take on such targets on infrastructure?
Well, as a contractor, I think to make a distinction between development and construction. As construction capability goes, I think on the highway side, we've already hit or close to hitting that 30 kilometer a day in terms of highway construction. So it's not a pipe dream. The challenge is really on the projects which are of a PPP mode, which is the BOT projects or the hybrid annuity projects, which you need to go to banks for financing. The appetite for the banks for financing such kind of projects does not exist because of legacy issues and all the pain that they have been forced to carry along with the private companies that have actually invested in those projects. That logjam has to be broken. So the future prospective issues have been resolved now by the bringing in of the new Arbitration Act and other measures. However, the legacy issues continue to dog everyone. So unless there is some focus on how do you unlock the legacy issues, it's going to be very difficult for the existing contractors stroke developers.
Can you specify when you talk about legacy issues?
Legacy issues are projects which went into arbitration before the new Arbitration Act came into play on the 23rd of October last year. So all those prior arbitrations are still under the old Act, which have no timeline, there's no deadline, there's no time by which it has to be closed out in one way or the other, and they will just drag on for the next 7-8 years. That has to be addressed in an urgent manner, because as I said earlier, that the prospective issues are resolved, the legacy issues continue to haunt, and that is what is haunting the banking system as well as the developer sector. So that these two things need more attention that they have got.
Very interesting points raised by Mr. Punja. Let's get two comments from you on the kind of issues which the contractor side point of view which he has raised.
No, I fully agree with what he said. At the end of the day, companies that have invested in the past need to be back on track, and there are issues on which they are stuck. So whether it is a resolution through government policy, whether it's a resolution through arbitration, all those things need to happen to close them out so that they can start again afresh and start bidding and investing in these projects. But having said that, there are other areas, for instance, EPC contracts, etc., where perhaps those challenges are not there and therefore the activity can go on. But both these need to work in tandem, because I don't think every aspect of development can happen only with EPC contracts. There will need to be some risk funding also. And Indian developers and foreign participants and collaborators in that must be encouraged to come in, and therefore banks have to be encouraged to invest, development financial institutions have to come forward, the issues have to get closed, and there has to be more predictability to some of the regulations that govern these projects. So I think all in all, it's work in progress. I think the government is fairly seized of the problem. Maybe the solutions sort of plowing through this difficult minefield of situations is taking a bit of time, but I'm hopeful that they will find a solution.
Right.
I agree with both of them. I think the narrow issue is that we have to find expeditiously ways by which legacy issues can be dealt with. So if I take the arbitration point further, all those cases now in arbitration should compulsorily be put into the new framework, because it has a time-defined resolution of the issues, and let it fall either way, but have it arbitrated. That's the only way in which the legacy issues can be dealt with. And we need to focus on it singularly and make sure these issues are dealt with within a time-bound framework.
And with that, it's a wrap-up from here in Tokyo. Thanks for watching CNBC TV 18.